In a revelation that could redefine the landscape of global finance, Ripple CTO David Schwartz has sent shockwaves through the crypto and institutional world with his latest disclosure. Multiple central banks are actively migrating to the XRP ledger, and in a monumental twist that few anticipated, Schwartz claims it won't be retail investors or exchanges who determine the price of XRP, but banks themselves. Yes, the same institutions that Ripple once sought to disrupt are now becoming the very engines of its valuation, and the implications of this shift are absolutely staggering. Imagine a financial architecture where sovereign monetary authorities, not speculative traders, are placing direct demand on XRP through state-backed use cases, cross-border settlements, tokenized central bank digital currencies, and fully automated liquidity corridors that run 24/7 across the globe. And while the crypto market debates meme coins and fleeting trends, Ripple has quietly built a back-end financial superhighway that is being adopted by the very powerhouses of fiat issuance. Schwartz's statement did not come as speculation, but as a confirmation of private integrations, pilot programs, and production-level testing underway with at least a half-dozen central banks across Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, and what's more, these banks are no longer evaluating XRP as a test token or a side project, but as a strategic settlement asset, chosen for its blazing transaction speed, low cost, and regulatory clarity, especially now that Ripple's legal battle with the SEC has largely cleared the fog around XRP's utility status in the US and beyond. The world has long operated on SWIFT, a messaging system built in the 1970s, but in 2025, the need for instant, interoperable, and secure financial transfer infrastructure has reached a critical breaking point, and Ripple, with its ODL, on-demand liquidity system built entirely around XRP, is the only crypto-based protocol that has proven itself capable of absorbing institutional throughput, real-time FX demand, and complex compliance standards all in one stack. And Schwartz's statement goes even deeper. He explained that once large financial entities begin transacting in trillions through the XRP ledger, the price will not be set on open markets like Binance or Coinbase, but through negotiated liquidity corridors, fixed supply constraints, and automated smart contract mechanisms built directly into wholesale CBDC programs, which means price discovery will be based not on speculation, but on real-world economic value, usage volume, and interbank flows. And when central banks begin pricing settlement volume through programmatic liquidity taps, the price of XRP could move rapidly, not in cents, but in leaps of dollars, then tens of dollars, possibly more, as the system moves toward price equilibrium, dictated by global liquidity demand, not market sentiment. And let us not forget, Ripple's partnerships with entities like the Bank for International Settlements, the Digital Pound Foundation, and multiple regional central banks are not PR moves. They're components of a new architecture already forming behind the scenes, as confirmed by Ripple's hiring of central bank integration engineers, CBDC architects, and former regulators from around the world. The plan is no longer hypothetical. The infrastructure is here, and the only thing remaining is the switch to be flipped. And when it is, the world could witness a price shock unlike anything the digital asset world has ever seen. Because if central banks begin absorbing XRP from the open market to feed institutional corridors, it could ignite a supply squeeze so extreme that XRP becomes not just a bridge currency, but a reserved digital liquidity instrument sitting on the balance sheets of the world's largest monetary authorities, with price dictated by liquidity, value, scarcity, and utility at planetary scale. And as Schwartz said in a recent interview, at that point, the average person won't even be able to buy significant quantities of XRP, not because it's locked, but because it's already accounted for by the system that actually moves the money. And that one sentence alone should make any XRP holder sit up, because we may be on the verge of a transition where the token becomes something far more valuable than speculative crypto. It becomes the underlying rail of the modern global monetary system. embedded in public-private hybrid ledgers, powering tokenized real-world assets, cross-border trade, and sovereign-backed stablecoins. And whether XRP reaches $10, $100, or more, it will no longer be a question of if, but of when banks decide that the scale of their transactions justifies the price to access such a rare, fast-moving, supply-constrained digital asset. And in that future, retail price charts may no longer tell the real story, because XRP's value will be defined not by what it trades for on exchanges. XRP is now being positioned to replace not only the decades-old SWIFT interbank messaging system, but potentially even rival the US dollar as the world's dominant vehicle for cross-border settlements, and as institutions around the world accelerate their adoption of Ripple's technology and the XRP ledger, mounting evidence suggests a coordinated, behind-the-scenes movement to make XRP the new backbone of international financial infrastructure, and the implications of this are staggering, not just for central banks and multinational corporations, but for the average retail investor who, if unprepared, may soon find themselves locked out of one of the most transformative wealth transfers in modern economic history, because with RippleNet expanding across every major region, including key corridors in Asia-Pacific, the Middle East, Latin America, and Europe, and with banks now quietly experimenting with XRP as a liquidity bridge, we are seeing the beginning of the end of SWIFT, which, despite its 11,000-plus member banks, is increasingly seen as slow, expensive, and vulnerable to geopolitical weaponization. While XRP provides a decentralized, near-instant, cost-effective alternative that doesn't rely on nostro-vostro accounts or clunky batch settlements, but rather flows in real time, 24/7, globally. And now that central banks and high-frequency trading institutions have begun testing XRP for everything from treasury management to settlement of tokenized assets and even programmable CBDC interoperability, the institutional train is leaving the station, and according to internal leaks, memoranda of understanding, and high-level consultations with Ripple officials, there is talk that XRP could eventually act as the universal bridge asset for central bank currencies, stablecoins, and digital bonds, effectively replacing both SWIFT's messaging layer and the dollar's settlement supremacy in one fell swoop, especially as geopolitical shifts move nations toward multipolar systems of trade. Yet while this historic realignment is being laid brick by brick at the institutional level, retail holders may soon face new limitations as demand outstrips supply. Custodial solutions begin allocating reserves toward institutions only, and exchanges begin implementing tiered access or minimum holding requirements as the price of XRP is projected to rise significantly beyond retail reach once utility demand kicks in at full scale. And this is why analysts now warn that retail holders who wait may lose access altogether or only be able to purchase fractional units under permissioned frameworks designed for compliance-heavy use cases, especially if XRP becomes embedded in the regulatory frameworks tied to international financial messaging, global AML, KYC infrastructure, and IMF payment rails, which would effectively gatekeep access behind institutional partners who are already negotiating access at preferential pricing, custody, and liquidity terms. While everyday investors still argue about short-term price movements without realizing that we are witnessing the construction of an entirely new financial paradigm in real time, and the clock is ticking fast. Because Ripple's legal clarity in the U.S., combined with foreign recognition of XRP as a non-security utility asset, has cleared the way for full-scale integration across banking infrastructure, smart contract tokenization platforms, and sovereign bond issuance, all of which are being programmed to interact with the XRP ledger. And once the switch is flipped and XRP becomes the default bridge asset for interbank payments, corporate treasury moves, and central bank clearing layers, the price will no longer be dictated by speculation. It will be determined by the trillion-dollar daily flows it facilitates, and if XRP even captures 10% of SWIFT's 1.5 quadrillion yearly transaction volume or displaces just 5% of the US dollar's role in international settlements.